All right. Well, this is really exciting for me. Growing up in Canada, loving sports, you look up to people who work on TSN. And this man right here, dare I say, is a Canadian sports broadcasting icon. He has done it his way. Yes, from the beginning. I'm talking about you, Dan O'Toole. And he was a pioneer, he was a trailblazer. And then he broke through some barriers. He walked through the forbidden door from Canada to the United States with his good friend Jay Onrait. He did it his way. He came back. He's had a phenomenal career. And the best part about it is still thriving and flourishing. He's now the host of his brand new podcast entitled Boomsies, which I'm told, there it is. Well, I mean, what a setup. He's in his basement right now in his house that was built in 1875, I do believe. He's the one and only Dan O'Toole. Dan, how are you?
Ariel, thanks for having me, buddy. Look at us. We're both doing the same thing, and I believe it looks like we're both using the exact same microphone.
We are. We are. It's a good microphone. I would say that the cord here is a little flimsy. I don't know if you have this issue with it. Other than that, your setup way cooler and more authentic than mine. I noticed the Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff LJN toy. I mean, that is taking me back. Well done.
Yeah. So I watched because they've got a Netflix show, the toys that made us or something. So it was the creation of those, and they weren't supposed to be this size. They weren't supposed to be this heavy because they brought the prototypes, and whoever was the buyer said, "Yep, we'll take those." And they didn't have the guts to say, "Well, those are just the prototypes. They're going to be much smaller." So they're like, "Well, I guess this is the size we're going to make them." Because these things, like the King Kong Bundy version of this, you could murder a human with it. It's got weight. It's got heft.
How many do you have?
I probably got about 15.
15. Okay.
Yeah, Superfly, got the British Bulldogs, Bobby the Brain Heenan, King Kong Bundy, Randy Macho Man Savage, Roddy Piper. The list goes on and on.
Hulk Hogan as well.
No, Hulk Hogan lost a leg by way of an animal. And then so I had to fight with them with the one-legged Hulk Hogan, which is tough to do a leg drop with one leg because how would you run up to do the leg drop? I guess you'd jump up. And then he got lost along the way.
By the way, I love the fact, and I don't know if people caught it while you were speaking, your cat just walked out of the Raisin Dan box right over your left shoulder over there. So you just have cats just kind of crawling around your set. That's a real cat, yes?
It's not a fake cat. We've got 3 wandering around, and I did have 2. We blossomed to 3, and I told my kids, I'm like, am I a crazy cat person? So they looked it up, and they said, if you have 5 or more, you are crazy cat people. So we are 2 below crazy cat level status.
All right. It just adds a lot of character to the set when you have a cat popping out right over your shoulder.
And by the way, this is a game used CJ Nitkowski Detroit Tigers hat.
Wow. I mean, the character. Oh, look at that. 95 Road. What does that mean?
That's his road hat.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Look at you. So much to talk to you about, Dan. Like I said, you got the new podcast, which launched at the beginning of the year, Boomsies. I don't live in Canada, but I hear that there's a commercial for your podcast that plays every 15 seconds on television, which is very exciting. Could I ask you, what is it like? And of course, we'll get into everything, but you were kind of out of the limelight per se, broadcasting. You were doing stuff on social media, but you were out of the limelight for around a year. To be back out there, to putting yourself out there, to having content, having people react to content, all that stuff, just being in front of the microphone again after a year away, a long time for someone who's doing it every night for 2 decades. What is that like for you?
It's been great because when I was doing social media stuff, I did a little campaign where I tried to promote Canadian businesses. It got the juices flowing again. It made me fall in love with the process of being creative. And at the same time, being away from sports made me become a sports fan again, because the Montreal Canadiens I grew up watching. They had a great Stanley Cup run. I loved when they had Patrick Waugh. So watching them get to the Stanley Cup final last year, guess what? I became a fan again. I was jumping. I was cheering. I'd never done that because when you do sports highlights over and over every night for 20 plus years, you kind of become numb to it. You're like, I don't want this game to go to overtime because I want to get the hell out of here. So I became a fan again, and that's what I've been able to do now is just become a broadcaster who's just doing it for the love of it, really, not for a paycheck, just because I want to talk. I want to be creative. I want to talk to people I wouldn't usually talk to. So it's actually been a breath of fresh air.
The Super Bowl wrapped up last week,
Mhm.
and that kind of coincides with a chapter of your life ending, right? Because you were let go from TSN right before the Super Bowl. And I'm wondering, with just the Super Bowl being back, did it take you back? I'm a big anniversary guy. Oh, I was doing this time last year, and this is how I felt. Did it take you back into that mode of, having your run at TSN come to an end with the Super Bowl and all the memories that come along with it?
It was actually, I'm now going to celebrate it because I talked about this on last week's podcast, Boomsies, where I was fired on a Wednesday by the, what the hell was that place I worked for? I always forget the name of it, but they fired me on a Wednesday. Super Bowl was on a Sunday. So from Friday to Sunday, I went on what professionals would call a bender. And then I woke up Sunday morning after the Super Bowl and I said, okay, I got to stop this. I actually entered a treatment facility on the Tuesday after the Super Bowl. So, and now I've been 1 year sober and most clear headed I've ever been in my life. And I see now the Super Bowl as this is my party, baby.
Mm.
I love it. Now viewing it with a unclouded lens and remembering the entire game is awesome too, because I don't remember much about the weekend's performance last year, but this year's performance, unreal. I'm sure we'll discuss that. But yeah, I see it as a celebration and a great anniversary every
Uh,
year. I'll see that as that every year now.
Last year's Super Bowl, you woke up with a gash on your head?
Yes, I fell down at some point and hit my head on my buddy's fridge. He's like, we saw you fall and couldn't catch you in time.
Wow. And so you were, I mean, completely inebriated?
Yes, yes. So I overindulged. I had my pity party, and then yeah, you just wake up and you're like, well, I haven't worked, or sorry, I've worked over 20 years at night, so now I'm gonna have every night free. This could go sideways quick. The way I compared it to was, it's perfect analogy because the Olympics are going on. I was standing at the top of a ski jump. I've skied before, but the chances of me landing that are 0.005%. So I got off the ski jump and decided to not attempt the jump and play it safe. So it was the best decision I ever made.
So it's one thing to have the pity party to feel bad for yourself. I mean, like I said, that's a very traumatic thing to happen in one's life, but to check yourself into a facility means you have a problem. How big of a
Mhm.
problem was this for you?
Well, I it was on the verge of becoming a major issue. Like I said, if I was having 2 glasses of wine or a bottle of wine after work, along with a little smoke here and there, that would have probably doubled in consumption had I not checked it, because I have friends and family. I actually have a very close cousin that died of alcoholism when it went unchecked. We thought this person was a successful person, had everything together. Then one day we found out, no, that wasn't the case. A year later, the guy was dead. So I'm like, it sneaks up on you that quick if you don't get a handle on it. So yeah, that's what I decided to do. I didn't want to roll the dice.
How long was this an issue for you? Like, how long were you going that hard?
Um, on weekends, I would go pretty hard when I didn't have my kids. Um, so I could see, yeah, I need to dial this back, but I'm like, why do I need to? I'm not in a relationship. I got this under control. When in reality, everyone who thinks they have it under control or questions if they are drinking too much, if you question it, you probably are.
Mm. So when you're a week now removed from working at TSN, now you're in a
Yep.
facility. Do you have a moment like you still are one of the most famous Canadian broadcasters right now? Like, it doesn't matter where you're broadcasting from. Everyone knows Dan O'Toole. Do you have a moment when you're in there and you're around other people who are going through a similar thing and you're like, wow, how did I end up here? How did I go from, Fox to TSN and now I would imagine it's very humbling, right?
It is. It was very embarrassing. I didn't think I would ever reveal this to anyone because I thought, oh man, this is so embarrassing. I'm in rehab. How did I end up here? But then after a year removed from it now, I see it as a badge of honor that I admitted, okay, I need to fix this. And now I can help others. I
Mm.
can show people that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to say, you know what, I've got a problem here. And that's what I'm using it as now. I'm not using it as a point of shame in my life. I'm seeing it as a chance to help others.
How long were you there for?
I was there for 23 days. I was supposed to be there for 2 months, but after 3 weeks, I said, I think I get the gist of it. I think I know the program here. It's kind of like going to spring training. You're like, well, I know how to play baseball. I don't need to perfect it. And I always tell people, this is what I said last week. You don't need to check into a treatment facility if you have an issue. You just need to find a support group and people that will help you, because the support community is like nothing else you'll ever find in your life. From team sports to family, these are people that root for you. They are cheering for you. Like, you reach 1 year, you got the people calling you every day saying, man, that's a big deal. I'm like, that's okay. No, they're like, no, you should celebrate. This is a big deal. So to get the affirmation that, okay, you've accomplished something, that you've had the courage to actually go ahead and do it. It's not easy. I'm not going to say it's ever easy, but the rewards far outweigh the negatives.
So you grew up on a farm in Keene, Ontario?
Otonabee.
Okay.
Otonabee.
Is that close to Keene?
Very close. That's where I played my minor hockey in Keene, Ontario.
Wow. Okay. So growing up on a farm, did you work on the farm as well? I mean, I imagine that's part of the deal, right?
My siblings will say I didn't do much work because I was the youngest child. I was the youngest of 4 kids, but yes, of course, I had to do everything like that, from plowing fields to helping with the pigs to cleaning barns there's never a time where you get to relax on a farm. While my friends are going away to like the beach or something, or going away camping, I'm like, well, I'll be here doing something. I'll be here fixing a fence.
How far is that from Toronto?
You're looking at an hour and a half.
Okay. So, I mean, this is real, like, rural Ontario.
Yes, very much.
Your school, from what I understand, just 4 kids in the class for a good period of time.
That's right.
You were the lone boy?
From grades 1 to 8, we had 60 kids in our school. My grade had 4 people, and I was the only boy.
That's crazy.
That's right.
Did you enjoy that? I mean, I guess you didn't know any better, right? But that's not exactly your typical grades 1 through 8 experience.
Looking back, it was awesome because our teacher at one point was a fastball pitcher who's now in the Hall of Fame for my hometown of Peterborough, Ontario, Claire Leahy. So every opportunity he had during the summer, class outside. We're going to play some baseball. We're just going to go run around. Like, I don't know if we did much learning, but it's probably better than just sitting there staring at a chalkboard, just running around and being a kid. It was fun.
At what point do you start to think that you want to go into broadcasting? How does that happen?
Well, I did the old classic, put the Hockey Night in Canada games on mute and did the play-by-play. And I also I got to find the tapes. I have cassette tapes of me trying to be Mean Gene Okerlund.
Oh, yes.
And interviewing these guys and all that stuff. So I think I like just hearing my own voice. So that ignited something inside me. And then when I got to high school, we have these programs here called co-op programs where you go and test out a job to see if you like it and you earn credits for it. I tried out teaching, and I'm like, I don't want to be in charge of these kids. They're annoying. So that didn't work. And then I went to this little radio station called Trent Radio, because our university in my hometown is Trent University. And I did radio, and I'm like, this feels like it's not even a job and I would get paid for this. And then went from college, out of high school to study radio broadcasting. And then here we are now in my basement.
The dream gig was what? Was it to be Hockey Night in Canada play-by-play guy? Like, was that the ultimate for you?
That would have been the ultimate. Yes.
Okay.
I actually did play-by-play out of school for the Fort McMurray Oil Barons, who's a junior hockey team up here in Canada. And yeah, I loved doing that. But then I got into doing highlights, and I'm like, well, this is a lot more fun, less travel, less work. So yeah, I'll just do this.
Isn't it interesting that, I mean, that's not that long ago. That's a little over probably 20 years ago, right? I mean, I know you got to TSN at what was like
In
2003,
2002. Yep.
2002. Okay. So, I mean, that job that you're thinking about, that you're talking about, the highlight job, essentially that job doesn't exist anymore, right? I mean, like there's no one growing up right now saying I want to be the highlight guy anymore. Does that kind of blow your mind? Like the it's still there, but it's so, I mean, even the way ESPN treats it, TSN to a degree as well, Sportsnet, it's kind of like something off to the side, but it's not a main thing anymore because the world has changed, the internet has changed, phones have changed things. Does it blow your mind that job like kind of no longer exists anymore?
It kind of does because I get so many broadcasters reach out to me and say, give me some advice. And I tell them, learn how to do something that's not traditional broadcasting. Because I don't know if the traditional broadcasters are seeing the viewing habits of our kids.
Hmm.
But if I gave my kids $100 each to find a show on cable TV, they would not be able to do it. My oldest is 14 years old. She has never used cable TV. She will never buy cable in her life. But there's so much content. We've had more content in this world than we've ever had in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So there are jobs out there. But yeah, will you be doing highlights? I don't know. Will you be shooting videos of you watching a game and giving your commentary that way? It's finding out a different avenue to get to people in sports. And I don't know what that is right now because, well, maybe it's what we're doing right now. This is one of the avenues that we've figured out.
Where were you when you got the call in 2002 from TSN offering you to come over?
Oh, Ariel, this is good.
Yeah,
so I was
go.
working at City TV in Vancouver. We had just launched a TV station there 9 months prior. I'm sitting there at my little sports desk, and I see the phone's blinking. So I pick it up. I get a message, and it says, Dan, this is Mark Milliere from TSN. If this is on speakerphone, please take it off. I'd like to discuss employment at TSN with you. When you get a chance, call me back. So I'm looking around the newsroom like, funny guys, I've been here 9 months, as if I'm getting a call from TSN. So I call them back. It was legit, but I shot them down. I shot them down 4 or 5 times because I was working in TV in Vancouver, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. I was done work at 7:00, Monday to Friday. I was dating Miss Molson Indy.
Wow.
I was spending every night with my friends, going to a great dinner. I finally had money for the first time in my life. I would think I was making like 60 grand. I'm like, I'm rich. And then they kept calling me back. And then eventually talking with friends and family, they're like, you do know if you shoot them down again, they might never call you back. So I said, okay. And luckily I did accept their offer. Finally, they thought I was a brilliant negotiator. And then about 6 months later, everyone at that station I was working at got laid off.
Oh, wow.
So I made the right decision.
And how long into your time there did you meet Jay Onrait?
I met him in the first few weeks. We were working on different shows. And then during the lockout in 2004, we got paired together. Jay was working with another anchor, Jennifer Hedger, very talented, very beautiful. She got moved up to another show because one of our other anchors had to move to Vancouver. So if a man by the name of Blake Price had not had to move back to Vancouver, I would never be paired with Jay. And Jay always says, I was working with Jennifer and then they paired me with you. So that really worked out, didn't it? So yeah, in 2004, we got paired together.
Did you like him right away?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Loved them. We discovered early on that we had the same sense of humor. There's 2 comedians by the name of Tim and Eric who did the Tim and Eric Awesome Show. Great job. Where we would watch that. We would get together and watch that. We would laugh at the same things. We'd watch the same YouTube clips. And then by the end of it, we were finishing each other's sentences. You know, from working from 2004 together to 2001, traveling across the country doing shows, going to 4 Olympics together, sitting on every plane together, doing live podcast events. We never had one fight.
Wow.
As I tell people, it was like the perfect marriage without having to sleep together.
I mean, it comes across that way on television. And I remember when, and we're going to get to the Fox years because that's where we met. Two Canadians working for Fox back in the day. I remember when the news broke and I was trying to explain to my American friends why this was such a big deal. I compared you guys to Keith Olbermann and Dan Patrick. You were the Canadian version of it was must see TV to watch you guys do Sports Center, Sports Desk, just like it was must see TV to watch those guys, and then Eisen and Stuart Scott, etc. Did you ever look to those ESPN guys and say we want to do that? Because for the longest time growing up watching TSN, there were legends there, the Jim Van Horns of the world, but it was always very serious, right? It wasn't as fun as you guys were having. Did you look to what ESPN was doing ever and try to emulate some of the stuff that they were doing on Sports Center?
No, because we didn't get ESPN in Canada.
Yeah.
So I didn't know those guys existed.
Wow. You weren't even aware of them?
Not really.
Wow.
Until later in life, because I didn't even get TSN because I lived on a farm and we had an antenna.
Wow.
So if we ever went to a hockey tournament, I would run into the room and put it on TSN. I'm like, okay, what's everyone talking about? And at that point, their programming was limited. So I'm like, a lumberjack challenge again? So every time I tuned in, it was programming that. I'm like, is this what I'm missing? So finally I got to see some sports desks and stuff. But I grew up with two gentlemen by the name of Mark Hepshire and Jim Taddy. Mm-hmm. They worked on Sportsline, which was a nightly highlight show on Global TV. And those guys laughed their asses off. It looked like they didn't give a crap. And I fell in love with them. So those were my Olbermann Patricks.
Okay.
To me growing up.
Do you recall when you kind of realized, holy crap, we're a really big deal. Like we mean a lot to people. People are tuning in, not necessarily to watch the highlights, but to watch us on display, having fun, cracking jokes. Do you remember when you had that moment where you're like, wow, we have something here. We made it.
Probably when we did the Cross Canada tour. It was called the Craft Celebration Tour, in which we would do our show for 10 straight days across the country. Darren Detition and Jennifer Hedger would take one side of the country. Jay and I would take the other. So we'd do a show on a Monday, travel the next day. Our next show would be a Wednesday. We'd flip flop. But going to these small Canadian towns who had to put in a bid and then win SportsCentre being broadcast live from their towns, showing up and meeting the people. And it was great to hear them because we do autograph tents and all this. And then you have the feeling like, no one's going to show up. Who's showing up for this? But the entire town would come. And I'm like, okay, they're just here because TSN's here. But then they would get to the front of the line and every single family that came up said, we wake up with you guys every morning. My mom never used to like sports. She even laughs. And that's where it hit us, where I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. And they're getting the feel for the show we want to do. We don't want to bat you over the head with stats. We want to make it fun. We want to make it for the whole family. And that's where it really hit home.
Now, I asked you about the call from TSN, the call from Fox. Do you remember where you were when that came through?
I was at the London. Was it at the London? Yeah, London Olympics was 2012. Mm-hmm. So Jay and I were at the London Olympics when I got the call from Fox that they were interested in us. And it went from, guys, we're starting this network. We're very interested to, we've gone a different route. So I'm like, oh, okay. Anyway, that was fun to chat with them. To, we want you guys. So it was a very chaotic chaotic month. Eventually made the move to LA. Didn't know what we were getting into, but it was one of the greatest work experiences I've ever had. Because you think, oh, we're just going to get lost in the cards working for a big company like Fox, but they treated us like we've never been treated before. And it was phenomenal.
So when you got that call in London, did you even apply or they seeked you out?
The Wall Street Journal has a reporter in Toronto, and he did an article, why can't American SportsCentre be like Canadian SportsCentre? And it was about Jay and I. So someone from Fox, a gentleman by the name of Jacob Olbermann, he saw that article, and that's what put the wheels in motion, all because of one article in the Wall Street Journal.
And that process took a month, like to go from them reaching out to you agreeing to a deal took a month.
From what I remember, probably a month or two, but yeah, I think it's about a month that we negotiated, and then again, there was one point where it wasn't going to happen. Then it got reignited. So about a month.
Was there any point of you that was like, we have such a great thing, we are superstars here, like let's not ruin this, let's not mess this up, let's just stay here, this is perfect, this is comfortable, we're icons? Was there any part of you that was trepidatious about going over there because you were so set in Canada?
Of course there was. And then I sat down with one of our bosses at the time by the name of Phil King. And he said, Dan, if you were my son, I would tell you to take this opportunity.
Wow.
So when one of your bosses tells you this is too good to pass up, you kind of have to do it. And if we hadn't have made the jump, we had a 4-year deal. We did the length of our contract, then moved back to Canada. But if we hadn't accepted the challenge, then we would have always regretted it. We would have looked back and said, well, what if? Now we have no what ifs. We don't ever have to ask that question. What if?
I saw a video. I was kind of reminiscing a little bit when you guys walked through, and I know those doors very well. They had maybe, I don't know, 100 people there greeting you, I think, on your first day.
That's right.
They
were singing "Oh Canada."
They were singing "Oh Canada" for you guys. What was that like? I mean, this is Fox. This is the big time. You're a huge part of this new network that they are launching to go after ESPN. Somewhat surreal for a guy from Peterborough, Ontario, no?
It was. I look back with nothing but fondness. They accepted us with open arms. They liked our quirkiness, and the initial greeting was phenomenal. And we got our own offices. Sure, they were cubicles, but I'm like, at TSN, I always made this joke. When you'd show up to do your shift, you'd try find a computer. Sometimes you'd have to ask like an intern, say, I got to write the show. Can you think I can borrow this computer? So not that we were treated poorly at TSN. It was just a completely different work environment.
One thing I'll say about Fox, my experience way different than yours. I was like, on the you were at the top of the ladder. I was kind of below the first step of the ladder, but they know how to treat talent. Like they got that avocado room that people talk about, and the food, and the like the makeup and the wardrobe and all. Like the one thing they do, and I've also been at ESPN. Everyone says they know to treat talent. Say what you will about Fox. And so I'm not surprised to hear you say that they treated you guys like kings. I also remember it was August of 2013. I remember I was in Boston because our friend Chael Sonnen is headlining the first UFC card on FS1, which is the big launching date. He's fighting Shogun Rua. He submits him. And then it goes from that fight to Fox Sports Live, the big debut of the new SportsCentre, if you will. This is for FS1. And watching it, I was like, wow, I can't believe America is going to get to see, Jay and Dan in their prime, like doing what they do best. And then they switch over to Carissa Thompson and Andy Roddick, and I think Donovan McNabb. And there they are. There's the old friends. Who is it? McNabb, Roddick, Carissa, and who was the fourth?
Ephraim Salaam.
Ephraim Salaam, who was recently on your podcast, Boomsies.
That's right.
How soon into it did you think, well, this isn't exactly what we had in mind?
First off, I want to go back to how they treated us. It's encapsulated by this moment that we experience every single day. We had our own dressing rooms. We would show up for our shift. Again, we're living in LA in sandals, shorts, t-shirts. We walk into our dressing room. The suit that you're going to wear that night, you have to put no thought into it. It is hung up with the tie, the socks, the shoes, ready to go. Even so much as the belt was already in the pants.
Wow.
So I'm like, this is the greatest ever. And their philosophy was, we want you to concentrate on nothing but your show and not have to worry about what you're wearing. This eases your mind. And I'm like, this is the greatest place ever. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so with regards to the show, oh yeah, that first one where they go to Carissa and Donna, and they're talking for like 10 minutes and then they throw to us and we're on for like 30 seconds. And this goes on for 3 hours every night. And I'm like, is this working? I think there might be too many cooks in the kitchen because there was a different producer for every segment. We were trying to do too much. It was almost like if you watch a lot of The Simpsons, when Homer Simpson designed a car, he tried to put too much into that car. He overthought it. And that's kind of what our show was. It was like the Homer Simpson car.
So how long does the honeymoon last? Like, when do you start to think like, I'm not sure if this is working out? It's a 4-year deal, and as you said, you went to the very end. But
Mhm.
when do you start to feel like maybe our way of doing things isn't exactly their way of doing things?
Well, we constantly tinkered with that 3 hour show, trying to figure it out as we went. Probably a month in, there was dramatic changes. But the biggest drawback was finding our channel.
Mm,
You live in the States. If
mm.
you've got satellite TV or direct TV or whatever you have, trying to find a show randomly is impossible. So at one point, they gave us business cards with the channel listings on every cable company. And our goal was to, like, if you go to a place, hey, can you put it on Fox Sports 1? They're like, what channel's that? You're like, here you go. It's channel 1601 on direct TV or whatever. So that was the constant struggle, was getting people to actually find the channel.
Mm.
And then if they did, to watch our show for 3 hours, I would love to know anyone that watched it for all 3 hours every single night, because yeah, it was a wild one.
And it wasn't 1 hour replayed 3 times. It was
No,
3 fresh hours.
3 fresh hours. So they were Donna McNabb and Andy Roddick and Carissa and Gary. They would be talking about the Dallas Cowboys. And then people, you check on social media and people be like, what do I care what Andy Roddick thinks about the
Right.
Dallas Cowboys? So I'm like, he actually put in the most work out of anyone. We would
Really?
go over to the cafeteria and Andy's going over stats and stuff. He took it very seriously, as they all did. But Andy Roddick put in the most time and effort on that show.
By the way, side note for the American or non-Canadian listeners, viewers out there, when you guys leave to go to Fox, the freaking Prime Minister of Canada tweets about you, right? Justin Trudeau tweeted
No,
wishing. Was it not Justin Trudeau?
it was Harper at the time.
Was it Harper? My mistake.
Stephen
Okay, yeah.
Harper.
Yes. In any event, he was the Prime Minister. He tweets about you, wishing you well, correct?
Yes.
Did he call you as well? Like, did you have any personal relationship with
No.
Mr. Harper? Because that was surreal.
We saw him at the Grey Cup. It was probably just before we left, and we got a picture with him. So that was our only ever interaction with the Prime Minister. So yeah, it was pretty cool to see. I still have the picture. It's not here in my studio right now, but us with the PM, Stephen
Right.
Harper.
But when that tweet comes through, you have no idea it's coming through. You're like,
No.
holy crap, that's insane.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that, actually. I should frame that or something.
That's a big deal. Yes. Shows
Yeah.
how much you were a part of the fabric of the country. I remember, as time is going on, you're in the nice fancy studio, and that evolves into basically, like, you guys, it looked like you were in your basement. Like, you were in such a tight space there towards the end.
Yeah.
But I would argue that was probably the best stuff that you were doing, because they probably forgot about you and they let you do your own thing. Am I right?
Yeah, they put us in a studio. They're like, well, we still have these, because everyone from that show was gone. Everyone but Carissa Thompson. She
Mhm.
was doing NFL on Fox stuff. So they're like, we still have these guys under contract. Let's figure something out. So we did a half-hour show every night where we had guests in there. We would do shots with them and stuff. And it was a very loose environment, but still, most of our stuff was being written.
Mm.
Like when Jay and I are at our best, we are ad-libbing. We're riffing off each other. It was still never that feel. At no point during our 4 years did I ever leave a show and say, oh man, that was great. So much so that when we came back to Canada in 2017, we did 2 days of rehearsals. After our first rehearsal show, Jay turned to me and said, that feels better than anything we've done in the last 4 years.
Wow. Wow.
Because it was just the two of us. It wasn't a lot of producers. And this is not taken away from the work and effort everyone put on those shows. They tried their asses off to make it work. It was just, when you tinker too much, it takes away from everything the show was about.
How long into it did you know that it would be one and done for you guys there?
We were holding out hope until the end.
Did you want to stay?
We would have stayed, I believe, but TSN flew down and they put a presentation together. It was a very Hollywood moment. We went to like this restaurant in Beverly Hills. Don Johnson was like 5 tables over, and I'm like, this is cool. They're putting out this package, and they're like, Canada misses Jay and Dan, and it's nice to feel wanted.
Right.
And we felt wanted again. Not that we felt unwanted at Fox, but we're like, you know what? Maybe it's time to go home. So we talked to them, and then I went to Vegas one weekend. I'm like, I don't know if this is the right deal. And then TSN called me at one point. They said, well, how can we make this work? And there were just a few changes needed to be made. And then went down, gambled on craps for a few hours, get back to my room, and there's a bottle of champagne from TSN, and it said, wow, welcome back to Canada, Dan. And it was just like, okay, this is a cool moment. And getting back to the country that you call home, there's nothing like it.
Did you enjoy living in LA?
I loved it. I lived in Redondo Beach and then in Marina Del Rey. There's nothing like just going to the beach whenever you want to.
Mm.
And people said all the time, do you miss the seasons? And when you're living there, you're like, no, I like this weather. But when you move back to Canada, you realize I did miss the seasons because you take 75 and sunny for granted. Right now in February, if we have a sunny day and it's like 0 degrees Celsius, you're like, this is the greatest day on earth, because you cherish those days because they're few and far between. So it makes you appreciate the weather, where you live a lot more.
Did your family like it?
They did. My kids were so young, they don't really have many memories. They want to go back. My one daughter, Ruby, she remembers churros on the Redondo Beach Pier, how they were the best churros on earth. And I have to agree with her. So it'll be good to go back. But we had the Disney season pass because we lived 45 minutes away from Disney. But it got to the point where we're like, kids, you want to go to Disney? And they're like, nah, we're good. I remind them of that now. And they're like, we said what?
All right, let's take a quick time out for my conversation with Dan O'Toole so I can tell you about my good friends over at ExpressVPN. When I'm on the road and connecting to Wi-Fi in airports or restaurants, it's really easy for hackers to steal my data. If you're not careful, the same thing can happen to you. That's why I use ExpressVPN. This is a shoot. I use them to safeguard my personal data online, and why I recommend it to anyone who spends as much time online as I do. According to recent reports, hackers can make up to $1,000 from selling someone's personal info on the dark web, making people like me and you easy, lucrative targets, especially when you connect to public Wi-Fi. ExpressVPN is an app that funnels your data through a secure, encrypted tunnel so that no matter what device you use, you can have peace of mind every time you use the internet. The app connects with just one click, is lightning fast, and the best part is ExpressVPN works on up to 5 devices simultaneously, so you and your whole family can stay protected. And if you visit expressvpn.com/Helwani right now, you can arm yourself with an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. Again, that's expressvpn.com/Helwani. All right. Thank you very much to ExpressVPN. Please support them because they support us. Now back to my conversation with the great Dan O'Toole. You mentioned the Canadians. I've always heard that there was like a Montreal restaurant bar in Redondo Beach.
That's right. The Redondo Beach Cafe, I think it was called, and it was owned by a former Winnipeg Blue Bomber.
Wow.
And I would go there all the time.
Was it good? Is poutine, I heard they have, is it legit?
It was legit poutine. It was good. And they had Montreal smoked meat that they brought in. And they had those really strong beers out of Quebec that were like 8% alcohol that they would serve there as well.
And like all Montreal memorabilia. Oh, wow.
Montreal everywhere. The Stanley Cup was there when the Kings won. They brought it into the place. So yeah, it was a nice slice of home.
Was there any part? So you feel the love from TSN. You know, I again, not a similar story, but mine is somewhat similar in that I went to ESPN and that was a dream for me. Mm-hmm. And I lasted 3 years. My contract was up and I chose not to resign. And it was time to go. And there was a part of me as that was coming to an end where I felt like a failure. I felt like, wow, you made the leap. You made it to the big time. This was your dream. And you're only lasting one contract. And it took some time for me. Actually, therapy helped me not look at it that way. And I know that you do that as well. Mm-hmm. Initially, did you feel like a failure? Did you feel like wow, we made the big leap. It was a whole big to do, and this isn't going as long as we thought it was going to go?
Uh, Probably entered my mind, but then it was quickly erased when we got back and we had our name on our show. It was
Right.
SportsCentre with Jay and Dan. And we always tell people we didn't feel appreciated until we left the country and came back. And then we got our name on the show. So that was that was not our vindication, but that took away any regrets or any feelings of failure, I believe, when you get your name on a show.
It does feel, at least to me, because it's come up a couple of times in the conversation, like you have no hostility, you have no resentment towards Fox. Like
Oh,
you,
not at all.
nothing. There's no bad feelings at all.
No, no, they treated
I
us
commend you.
amazing. Yeah. They paid us out our entire contract, let us go to the very end. Like there was a couple months at the end where they're like, if you guys just don't say anything bad about us, we're just going to pay it the rest of your contract. We're like, sold.
Wow.
They gave us an opportunity. They took a chance on us, and I have zero ill will. I have some of the best friends of my life still working at Fox, and even in management. I talk to management all the time when there's a big event. I'm like, oh my God, you guys blew that out of the park, like the Field of Dreams game.
Mm.
Texting bosses, I'm like, guys, I've got chills. I'm like crying. They're like, oh yeah, it turned out amazing. So yes, no hard feelings at all towards them.
Can I ask what happened with Katie Nolan?
I don't know what happened.
The tweets, and you tweeted something and it seemed like you were talking about her.
Oh,
And
right. Because there was a bunch of layoffs and her show had tweeted out like, oh, it's great to be, I don't know what they're covering, some event. And I'm flying on a plane back from Canada. I'm like, we just had our entire show wiped out, because I believe that was at the point where Fox Sports Live went from an airplane hangar of a studio into a closet.
Mhm.
So guys we worked with every single night for the past 2-3 years are out of a job. They go from steady work to I might get a couple shifts a month. So and Jay and I are always on great relations with everyone on the show. So that hit us. And then I read that. I'm like, why would you ever send that out about how great your show is doing when all these people got laid off? And I think things smoothed over. Katie and I have messaged since. I don't think there's any bad blood, at least not on my part. I wish her the best, and I don't wish her to any failure. It was just at that moment, I was of the mindset where, why would you do that when all our people just got laid off? I probably
Makes sense.
shouldn't have, but well, what are you gonna do?
I mean, you were loyal to your guys, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that. I've heard you say 2017 to 2021, the shows that you did with Jay, that's the best work that you guys have done together.
1,000%.
Why is that?
We were just in well, it's almost like if you played a sport long enough and you've had the same line mate for that long, you aren't amateurs anymore. Like if I look back on the top 10 that they played of our show when we went to the States, top 10 Jay and Dan moments, I cringe at all of them. It is bad. In my mind, it is bad because it's forced. It's too scripted. We went to Fox. When we went to Fox, we went to Russia and we did all unscripted stuff about investigative reporting. That's our best work we ever did with Fox. And then from that, we carried what we did there back to Canada and did a lot more unscripted and a lot more kind of just not giving a crap and going to work again, trying to make each other laugh. That's what we tried to do every night. It was never spoken. We never went out there and said, oh, I'm going to make you laugh tonight. But when you work with each other that long, you know how to tee each other up. You know when to shut the hell up. You know when to let a joke just sit. And that's what we did from 2017 to 2021. And at least once a week, if not twice, one of us would laugh so hard during the show that we were in tears. And I had never experienced that in the 15 years prior of doing any of those shows. I had never loved our work so much and been so proud of what we were putting on the air.
So did you have any premonition that this was going to come to an end? Did you have any feeling, any sort
No,
of nothing?
no.
Completely blindsided.
There was a bunch of layoffs, people that I knew got laid off. And then one morning, that happened about 3 weeks to a month prior. And then one morning I woke up to an email and it said, you're needed on a business decision conference call or something. And I'm like, this doesn't look good. So I called up a buddy who just got laid off and I said, I just got this email. And he's like, yeah, that's the same one I got. And I'm like, oh shit. I guess it's happening. And then the worst part is they send the email at like 8 or 9 a.m. and the conference call isn't like till 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
Like
sitting on that.
The waiting was just pacing and figuring out, well, this sucks. And then talking to Jay, he's like, I didn't get that email. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? And then you get the call and then, yeah, you don't have a job. You're told it's a business decision. And then also a nerve-wracking part was when HR gets on the phone and they say, anything on your phone, you better get off it because that phone gets wiped in 5 minutes. And I'm like, I barely know how to take a photo with this phone. How? So you're calling people that know anything about technology. Oh, back it up on the cloud. You got to do this. So it's very nerve-wracking. That day is just a blur in which I was informed. Yeah.
So, I have heard you also say no ill will towards Jay. You want everyone to watch his show.
Yep.
He didn't let you go. Like you're still
Correct.
his friend. You're still very close, right? You guys.
I was sending him. I found out a new song last night in my discovery search on Spotify. Sent it to him. Yeah, we text probably every single day.
But just naturally, is there a part of you that's like, well, why'd you let go of me and not him? Like what? Like we're a team, Jay and Dan. Like you don't say,
Yeah.
There's no Jay. There's no, you know what I mean? So how do you come to the conclusion that one of us has to go?
Oh, of course, I have that question every single day. And it was a money decision. And the one thing that people always say to me is, well, are you mad at Jay? First off, yes, he didn't fire me, but he should have left his job too in support. I'm like, are you crazy?
Right.
You actually think you would leave a job in which it pays you every 2 weeks to go out in limbo just to support someone? I said, you're out of your mind to think that.
It's not awkward though.
With Jay?
Yeah, because you're such a
not at all.
Not at all.
No,
that's amazing. I commend you. I think most people would feel awkward. Most people will feel like some sort of way about it. Do you ever watch it?
Well, Jay probably feels the most awkward because
he might have survivor's guilt, right?
Probably has that. And also he has to do twice the amount of work for the same amount of pay. He's got to do all the highlights now.
Right. That is true. Would you watch it? Are you able to watch it? Do you care to watch it?
I've watched it a few times, but I really got back at them by canceling that channel.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's going to get them at the bottom line. That's going to get them.
Yes, they're going down. So do you have resentment towards TSN?
Wow. I don't know what that station. I don't know what that is that we just said. I don't.
Fair enough.
I don't remember the name of that place he used to work at. So I don't know about that.
Okay. There aren't a lot of places in Canada that,
There's only 2. There's 2 employees for someone who did my job.
Right. Sportsnet would be the other one, Roger Sportsnet. Yeah. And they're somewhat on equal footing these days. Sportsnet has really come a long way in the last 15, 20 years. Did you talk to them after leaving?
No. I've never got a call. I've never got a call from a single broadcaster that was looking to hire me in 1 year. I never got a single call.
Did you, that's why we have agents, right? Did you reach out to people?
No, I didn't.
Why not?
Because, my lawyer at the time, he's like, well, you gotta pay bills and stuff. So why don't you call the little radio station in your hometown? And I'm like, so here's how I put it to him. I'm like, Dave, say I get a weekend shift on the radio at this station. And then if everything goes right, I work my way up to the top of that station. And then I get moved to a bigger market. And then what? I get fired and then have to do it all over again. So that was my mindset. I'm like, if you get to the top and then they say we've got to fire you because you're making too much money, where do you start again? Is it just a loop for the rest of your life? So that's why I wasn't upset. I was kind of like, it was a shot to the ego when no one calls, because I don't toot my own horn, but I was pretty damn good doing highlights. And as you said, though, is there even a job for that anymore? Because those are few and far between. So it gave me the opportunity to start something new and reimagine and kind of just start all over again and find out something I really want to do. And luckily I found it, because now I have put more effort and time into this little podcast from my basement and preparation than I did in the last 22 years. It's not that I didn't take my job seriously. It's just, that's not how we did our show. We just did it off the cuff. Now, as you know, there's a lot involved. You've got to you got to figure out how to record things. You got to get the audio. You got the lighting. You got to get guests booked. And yeah, it's been a great experience. And do I miss doing highlights every night? I do not miss getting home at 2 a.m. The earliest I ever got home in the last 22 years was 2 a.m. So that wears on you.
Right.
Now
yeah.
I can't wait to go to bed at like 10 or 11 at night.
Yeah.
I get into bed and I smile. I actually laugh to myself when I curl up and I'm like, oh, this is great. I get like an 8-hour sleep. I don't have to race to catch up on sleep, because you're a walking zombie at all times when you're chasing sleep. So I do not miss those hours.
Initially, though, just, because you were so present on television, and you've talked about this a little bit on your social media, which I appreciate. I think a lot of people can relate to it. Like, I'm sure there's a little bit of depression, right? There's that feeling where you're trying to assess what happened to your life, where you go from here. How did you get over that? Because you seem like you're in a great place now mentally. You've talked about mental health as well. That's something that's very important to me. How did you get over the initial shock of having this run come to an end?
Well, inadvertently, I kind of shifted my focus when I entered the treatment facility 3 days after being fired, because I'm like, I'm focused on this now. I had a deal in which I was getting paid a certain amount of time. So I'm like, okay, I don't have to worry about work for a certain set of months. I can focus on myself. And that took out all that from my brain. I didn't worry about what am I going to do next? When people would ask me, so what are you going to do? And I'd say, I don't have a clue. I've given it no thought. And I wasn't lying to them when I said, I don't have a clue what I'm going to do for my next job. Because I talked to former bosses and they're like, well, you're pretty much done in this industry. So I'm like, that doesn't sound good.
But why would you be done? Like what? Why?
I don't know, because I reached a point in my career and now I'm probably tied to Jay. So they probably thought, well, no one's going to hire you by yourself. So maybe look at other options. That was what they thought. Thank God they were wrong. But as far as mental health goes, yeah, I shifted the focus to myself. And I realized that earlier in my career was probably ego, where I'm like, I've got to be on TV. I've got to be seen. But I didn't need that. I don't need to be on TV. I don't need to walk down the street and someone says, hey, it's Dan. It still happens. And I haven't been on TV in over a year. So if I ever needed that, I just get validation whenever I go to Toronto or something, but I never needed that. I don't need to have like the best seat at the restaurant. First off, I rarely eat out. I don't need to jump the line at a bar. I didn't need any of that. I just needed to find what made me happy. And I discovered that in the last year. And that's just living life and experiencing and enjoying the small things in life. And about number 35 on the list was being on TV. I'm like, there's so much more. There's so much more to life. And luckily I figured that out.
I listened to your first episode and it was very touching, especially as a father, when you're talking about riding on the bike with your kids on a summer
Yeah.
night. I mean, to be honest, I don't know how to ride a bike, and it made me a little bit sad
Wait,
about
wait, wait, wait,
legit.
wait.
Yes, yes. I
Why?
don't know
How
how to
has
ri
that happened?
I've tried so many times and I
It's
can't
so
get
easy.
I know people say get up, ride a bike. I can't do it. And it actually made me feel envious that you get to experience this because I would imagine riding around with your kids in the neighborhood on a warm summer night is like the greatest thing. You were getting very emotional, and I think you
Yeah.
were getting emotional because of the actual literal riding on the bike experience and the figurative one, right? Um,
Yes.
and I think that when you talk about your children, when you talk about your daughters, I mean, it makes us all happy, right? When we talk about our kids. But could I ask, like, why does that make you so emotional? Why does that thought make you? I mean, you were openly crying on the
Yep.
podcast, and it was very touching. It was amazing to listen to. Why did it put you in that spot?
A few things made me tear up. Well, first off, I cry at commercials. I cried Sidney
Okay.
Crosby commercials. I like my kids, we go to the Nutcracker every year. They watch me at the Nutcracker to see when I'm going to tear up because it's just so beautiful. At one point, my oldest daughter, Sydney, she went to her first Nutcracker performance when she was 5 or 6. And at one point, she turned to me and she said, "Dad, is this real life?" So at that point of the Nutcracker, I know when it happens, when all the ballerinas come out and they all look like snowflakes, I am just a puddle. So when I was talking about the bike ride, there was two thought processes going on. One was envisioning actually riding the bike because it is my favorite. We'll have dinner in the summer, a warm summer night. We live in a small little town where you can ride around in the middle of the street because there's no traffic. And we wave to people while we're riding around. We honk our horns. We like have little chats with everyone riding around. And that just moment is, I wish I could bottle that because you're so full of love. You're just full of life and you just don't want it to end. And then when the bike analogy, I came up with that. So when I'm describing those summer night bike rides and then thinking, well, if I hadn't made the change, if I hadn't entered treatment, if I had harbored all that resentment towards my previous employer, like you screwed me, and then just drank and smoked to try get those feelings to go away, I wouldn't be there riding that bike. Literally, I would not be enjoying those moments because I would just be an angry person. No one would want to be near me. So when I finally vocalized it for the first time, that's where it all hit me. And I'm like, holy shit, I almost let that all get away. If I hadn't have made the if I hadn't made the decision to make a drastic change in my life and do it right now before it got out of control, I would not be enjoying those moments. So yeah, it all kind of just hit me when I voiced it out for the first time.
It was tremendous, and I would urge anyone to listen to it. That's the first official. You had the trailer episode, but like the first official episode.
That's
Um,
another thing about doing these. I didn't know you had to put out a
yeah,
trailer.
it's a
And they're
whole
like, well,
thing.
they have to make sure like you aren't telling people how to skin a cat
Yeah.
like every episode. I'm like, I guess that makes sense. But yeah, that's another part of the process where I knew nothing about.
I'd be remiss if I don't ask you this, and I completely understand if you don't want to answer it.
Yep.
Um, but there was a story that came out regarding a newborn child of yours, and there was a lot of fear about what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Are you able to address what happened there, or would you like to keep it to yourself? I know it's a very touching and touchy subject, but
Yeah.
a lot of people were
So
concerned for you in that moment. I certainly
so a
was. I
few
know tons
things I
were.
can address. One is when people like still attack me, like I still get the odd people, they'll send screen grabs from whatever publication it was in, like the New York Post and my current employers, they send it to them saying, "Oh, real upstanding individual to employ this guy." Um, my problem with it was when I sent out those messages, wondering about my daughter's safety, and people say, "Oh, great PR trick." They thought I would send out messages about my daughter to get attention when my job is already on TV. I'm in the public eye. There was thought put behind those because I was in a situation where I had reached out to lawyers, to authorities, and they said, we can't help you. I gave them my concerns. I said, here's where I'm at. Help me, because I am terrified for the moment I am experiencing right now, and my fears. My fears were real. Nothing I put out there was a lie. But I sent it out. In hindsight, I should not have sent it out. But when you are in a headspace in which everyone says, sorry, we can't do anything, but you're like, no one's listening to me. Will someone listen to me and help me with this situation I'm dealing with right now? And they say, sorry, you can't send. So I hit send. And that's where it went. And then I didn't expect it. When you're in a headspace in which it's so clouded, it's like 5 wars going on inside your head, and no one wants to help you put it out. And then I sent a tweet, and I'm like, okay, this has made things worse, but I'm not backtracking on my mindset right now, because that was a very real emotion that I was experiencing. It was a very real situation. And that was my only way of trying to help the situation, when it just made it worse. But for those that said, like, screw this guy, I'm like, how did it affect your life? This was my life. Do you think I want this broadcast out there? Do you think I wanted this for attention? I did it because I was desperate. Do I wish I hadn't done it? Of course, but it's now part of my life experience. I can't erase it, and I don't run from it. So I just wish people would see it from, this was a father who was desperate for information and for help. And that was his only resource that he saw at that time, because he was getting no help from anywhere else.
Everything okay now on that front? Okay.
Everything is fine. My daughters are here all the time. And at some point, yes, I'll have to explain that to my daughter and say, here's where we're at. And that's something I'll address later in life, when she obviously has the understanding. But I know I'll have to address it with her. And I know that it's something, whenever you Google my name, that'll come up and it'll be attached to me. But just know, I didn't do it for publicity.
Mm-hmm.
I did it to try help a situation that I was involved in at that time.
I appreciate you addressing that. In conclusion,
Yep.
you have the new podcast, Boomsies, out once a week, right? There
That's
it is.
right, baby. This guy actually, so joys of living in a small town. This guy's like, I want to make a sign for you.
Wow.
Like, okay, he dropped this off yesterday. When a guy says, I'm going to make a wood sign for you, I thought, okay, it's going to be like something my kids made. I'm like, yeah, sure. Drop it off. This is our exact logo. This is our exact logo. And he's like, I just got a new machine. I wanted to try it out. And I wanted to give you something because I love your podcast. And yeah.
And it's called Boomsies because your producer at Fox used to say that in your ear.
That's right. Sean Keegan. So whenever there's a big dunk or something, he go, that's a Boomsies. Or if someone like fell on their face, Boomsies. So can I read you a description? I got a great description of my podcast.
Please.
That I think okay, here's where this guy sent it to me yesterday. And this perfectly describes what I'm trying to do here. He said, I listen to a lot of radio. This is a breath of fresh air. You know why? Because you teared up, told us about 2 cars not working, gave away underwear, and plugged the Orono store in one fell swoop. No agendas or political bullshit. Just a dude in his basement talking to us and the cat. So I'm like, that's exactly what I want to accomplish. I just want to be here for a conversation. I'm a very flawed human. I shed light on that. I don't hide from it. And I'm hoping to help others where we can just have a conversation and realize that there's more things in life than worrying about your Toronto Maple Leafs winning the Stanley Cup and getting angry when they lose, or your car breaking down, or anything. There's more to life. And that's what I'm here to provide, is just a 1 hour respite every week where you can just tune off, and just have fun and just hang out. I just want it to be like a little clubhouse, really.
It's very natural. It's very you. Would you be okay if this is your thing for the next 15, 20 years?
Hell yeah.
Because you said you don't want to go up that ladder and then someone says to you, you make too much and then so you want to be the master of your domain, independent Dan doing his own thing. I know
Yes.
you're working.
You said I don't want to go up the ladder. I just want to go down the stairs. There's the stairs
That's amazing.
I take down to work. And I'm like, you can't beat the commute. So I don't want to go up the ladder. I want to go down the stairs, Ariel.
Will you have Jay on?
1,000%. I get that asked that I read viewer emails and everyone asks that, but I'm never going to extend the invite. If he says, hey, I'd love to come on, I'll say, yes, come on, because I don't want to put him in the situation where he has to say no to me, because he and we're of the same belief. If we get asked on a podcast or something, you're like, I don't want to do that, but I don't want to say no. So you do it unless like it's a podcast like this where I know the guy.
Right.
Because you probably get asked to go on a lot of them and you're like, you hate saying no to people. We're Canadian.
I know. I'm going through that right now. I've said yes to too many people and I just had to decide and here I am. The worst part of my job, and you're going to know now, luckily for you, you have people who reach out to guests. The worst part of my job, the part that if I could erase one thing, is the asking of people to come on my show. I hate it. I've never, in all my years of doing this, Dan, I've never had someone book a guest on my behalf. For some reason, I am crazy enough that I feel like I need to make the ask. I wish I could hand that off. It's the worst.
Wait. In my defense, I book all our guests except I have a list of dream guests.
Yes.
And my producers are going to book those, not telling me when. I think I have one today.
Yeah.
So they book the dream guests. And there are only 6 of those, but all the other guests I book. So
good on you.
And the great thing is, since it's at my house, I can do them any time of day. Like I interviewed a Canadian Olympian that'll air this week, Alicia Riesling, last night. And we just talked about the Olympics and did it on our own free time. So yeah, but asking people, it's a pain in the ass.
You're doing great, Dan. I'm a huge fan for life. I wish you nothing but the best. Again, the new podcast is entitled Boomsies. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. Also, it's on YouTube as well.
If you use voice to text, people have told us it comes up boobies.
Yes.
So watch out for that. Make sure you type it in. Boomsies, not boobies.
Congratulations on a legendary career. And I'm so happy that it is continuing and flourishing in this new way in 2022. It's all about podcasts, as you know. It's all about the internet. As you said, kids are watching things different. You're pivoting as well. Well done. So thank you for the time. Respect to you. Thanks for being honest and open with how you're feeling. I think that helps a lot of people. You know that as well. And thank you for doing this. This was great.
Ariel, I will always say yes to your requests just because you have to now say yes to mine.
Amen. I'll be there anytime. I can't wait. Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much for watching this episode of the Ariel Helwani Show. If you want to check out some of our old episodes, or if you want to stay up to date with all the great things that we are doing here, please do like and subscribe to this here page. Trust me, some really cool things are coming up.